There has been an effort underway for some time to make DC into a full state and give it the representation that many activists there say it deserves. Are we getting close to that actually happening? We're joined now by Terron Sims II to discuss. Terron, welcome to the Damage Report.
Hey, thanks for having me, John.
Glad to have you on. And so, look, as I pointed out, this is something that people have been working on for some time. Why now does it seem like we might be getting closer to that? Can you tell us a little bit about the recent developments?
I think now, obviously, we're getting closer because Congress finally has passed some legislation, HR 51 to be exact, which would give DC its statehood. Years prior, the past couple decades, actually past 3 decades, I'd say, a small handful of Democratic progressives partnered with DC residents have attempted over those years to go forward DC statehood. But even during the Obama administration, there was never any traction amongst the majority of Democrats, at least Democratic representatives of the House. But now that majority exists, and it's definitely a big step forward in DC getting into statehood and its constitutional rights.
So do we know how many people have gone on the record that would potentially be voting on this to say that they're supportive of the effort?
That's a good question. I couldn't give you a definitive answer. I do know that I couldn't think of a single DC resident that would be against this. The problem that exists now, as you're probably aware, John, is there are thousands of bills that are sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk that the Congress has passed. And right now, that's the biggest roadblock.
Yeah. So tell me, we'll talk about what could happen in the future. But for right now, if you live in DC, what sort of representation do you actually have?
So in DC, you have a shadow member of Congress, in this case, Eleanor Holmes Norton, who's an incredible woman and leader. But she can only vote in subcommittees and committees, so she can't vote on the floor. At the same time, they have shadow senators, but their power is so limited that you never really hear from them. So, the only representation in Congress that DC residents have is those shadow members being able to influence those with whom they caucus, in this case, the Democrats, to vote in DC's favor.
Yeah, and I will say, look, at least for me as a member of the media, I almost never hear about any of those conversations, any of that influence. I'm sure some of that exists behind the scenes, but as to an outsider, it seems pretty much invisible. So let's talk about if it were to be made into a state, hypothetically. Talk to me about DC right now. In terms of its population, how does it compare to some other current states?
Yeah, so right now, population-wise, it's larger than Vermont and Wisconsin. I can arguably say, having grown up in this area and driven all over the country, that you could probably drive through, even though Rhode Island's bigger than DC, you could probably drive through Rhode Island faster than you could drive through DC. If you went from one tip of 495 to say to the Crystal City, Pentagon City section of Arlington.
Mm-hmm. And so what if it were to be given representation, how do you think that might change the lives of the people that live in DC?
So obviously the obvious is they would receive at least 1 member of Congress and 2 senators. With this new census coming up, I'd definitely be curious to see if they would pick it up 2, if not 3 members of Congress. But that fact is one of the underlying reasons as to why this legislation is stymied and why DC hasn't received a statehood since DC residents have been advocating this for the past 30 years. Because power doesn't; those with power don't give it up easy. In this case, those members of Congress and in the Senate would be Democrats, and thus tipping the scales of power within the Congress and the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, I guess some people might not like it being like sort of laid out in those clear terms, but it does simply seem like a politically pragmatic move by Republicans to block it if it would potentially throw off the numbers there. And I assume that's probably why this effort has been going on for so long without any actual progress. I mean, back in 1993, there was a proposal to make it a state, and I mean, we've had literally decades past now where it's been lagging.
Right. Yeah, to me, it's definitely political play, especially now. I would say in years past too, there definitely was a strong racial element to it. For instance, most people don't know that DC City has to get its budget approved by Congress, right? And the only city in the country I know of that has to go through that process. So it's almost like a stepchild relationship that this city has with Congress, even though it's their own revenue.
Mm-hmm. So right now, potentially we're going to have a vote. I assume the Senate, probably the Republicans would be not too positive towards it. Do you think that if it made it to Trump's desk, do you think that there's any chance that he would actually sign it?
It's funny you mentioned that because the obvious answer would be no, but President Trump is so crazy and desperate for Black votes and Black support. Because every once in a while he'll go out in left field and do something that you define as the right thing, even though it's for selfish reasons. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like daring Mitch McConnell to let this thing get passed, so the president could pass it in order to gain some, I guess maybe 0.1% additional Black support for his presidential reelection.
Yeah, and I think we should at least point out that, like, we both agree they don't want it because those new representatives and new senators would be Democrats. But that is an admission that those Republicans are saying, we got nothing. We're not even going to try to appeal to these people. It's not like these people are genetically Democrats. Hypothetically, you could appeal to them if you were to put forward something that they found appealing. But there's a sort of tacit admission that is not coming. They don't think it would work, and they're not even going to offer it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sad that they would naturally assume that. I have Black Republicans who are both friends and mentors, even though I'm staunchly Democrat. Who knows what would happen, right? Maybe it would revive Black Republicans to be active in their party. Who knows? But as long as they want to hold hard to the party line of not giving the obvious additional representation or I guess number of votes to the Democrats, then we're always going to be stymied there.
Yeah. Look, I doubt they would see that as an opportunity that's worth exploring. But hey, the bill's there. It's available for them as an option if they want to go down that avenue. And Terron Sims II, we really appreciate you joining us and breaking this down.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.